Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass program, Fired Up, and I have a really exciting guest with us today. Before we get started, I do have a couple announcements I want to make. The first is we are really excited to have our first ever endowed fund for AACG. And this is a scholarship fund that is made possible through a gift by the Pally family and will enable us to give scholarships well into the future. So if you are willing to consider making a donation, every tiny little bit helps. So please look in the chat and you can find the link to that fundraiser, and please do consider donating if you are able. I also have some really exciting programming to share with you. We have a new series that we're starting for AACG called Collector's Edge. This is an exciting new program that will center on panel discussions to really dive into many of the different things that are not only happening currently in the art world, but also things that really provide a lot of knowledge for someone as both a new or seasoned collector. Our first installment of that will be on November 7th. So I do encourage you to look out for that as well. It's free and open to the public. And then in November, a special thing we're having for members only is a Zoom with New York Times bestselling author Tracy Chevalier. And she wrote a book called The Glassmaker, which is a fictional book, but it's centered in Murano and has received a lot of acclaim. So we're really excited to have her with us on November 14th. So if you're not an AACG member and would like to join in that presentation, please do consider joining. We have very special rates for students and artists as well. All right, on to the star of the show today. We have with us Mathieu Grodet, and I am so excited to share with you his work, and it really is something to behold. He's going to share a brief retrospective first of sort of the flow that his work has taken over the years, starting out in the hot shop, delving into his very detailed drawings, and then, of course, ending up in a very focused presentation on murrine, where he will discuss a reproduction of a 2,000-year-old Egyptian murrine. And it was quite challenging to go through reproducing an artifact of that nature, and of course also very exciting and rewarding. So please, Mathieu, go ahead, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Demetra, and thank you all to attend my presentation. Please let Demetra know if my accent is a problem or if you don't understand, and I will repeat. So maybe I'm going to share my screen and launch the... So Demetra, you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. Is that good now?
No, we cannot see it.
Okay. So, oh yes. So give me a second. Okay, of course there is. Okay, so share.
Great, and now we just need the full screen.
And now the full screen.
Perfect.
Okay. So hello, thank you everybody for joining today. And I will share a brief look back at my journey in glass. And this will lead on my current obsession about murrine and its more than 2,000 years old roots. And we will explore the difficulty to reproducing ancient artifacts. So let's begin. Okay. Just give me a second. Okay. So to give you a little bit of context, that is the street I grew up on, close to the Loire River, about 1 hour south of Paris in the town of Orleans. And after studying for 3 years in the Fine Art School of Orleans, I discovered glassblowing in 1998 through a good friend of mine, and I was hooked right away. And I never stopped since. So here I'm the yellow one. Really soon after I started blowing glass, I also started flame working, and I followed a 1-year program in the French School for Glass. France has a big tradition on graphic novels, and those comics has always been a part of my life and how I spent a lot of my time since I was young. Then my drawing practice merged with my glass passion. And this drawing represents well my interest for words as well as drawing and glass practicing. It's kind of like a glass saucer. And here are some wings I did in collaboration with Tiny Alliance around 15 years ago with flame working technique. So every feather is individually made and put together on on a metal structure. That is another pair. And around 15 years ago, I also did a piece I titled Bankster, inspired by the 18th century diorama made in the town of Nevers in France. So the scale of that piece is 12 inches by 12 inches by 14 inches high. So everything is in glass, but for the bankster suit and the curtain behind. And for example, the chandelier you can see here is 1.5 inches height. When blowing glass, I like to create pattern balls reminiscent of the Roman era with bold colors. So those are just using color cane without gathering in the furnace. So it's like very fun to play with color. And also they're cold worked on the outside to have kind of like a shine inside and a little bit more matte on the outside. And that is a set. I also like to blow goblets, and I had it by engraving the surface with my original drawings. So this one is called Nuclear Meat. Here is a humor example where I twisted the idea of a traditional goblet. It's also adding more surface to have fun to engrave. That's another one. I did a whole series of those. Then I also have experimented with my original design by using enamel paints. And here are some of the results. So I started also with like traditional tumbler and more complex cup. And the team of the Tacoma Museum made that one during a residency about 6 years ago. So that was a great opportunity. It's a great team and great place. And this is a large scale disc of 18 inches diameter. Took me around 2 months to complete. Painting in enamel, it's a time consuming detail process. And here is one of my favorite collaboration. The great American glassblower Raven Sky River created one of the best canvas I could think of for me to express myself on contemporary issue like the environment. So here is more detail, and this piece also required a lot of time and work. It took me like more than 3 months. It's more than a meter long, like more than 3 feet. It's all original. Oh, sorry. Then around 10 years ago, I started the transition from big pieces to small intimate work with the murrine technique. So the rooster is a mandatory entry door, I could say. Like the Moretti did some great rooster. It's like the symbol, the animal totem of Murano, and it's also the animal totem of France. So it was making sense to starting by that. And it's all originated when I took an inspirational workshop with Lawrence Stump at the Corning Studio, where I learned the process of slowly building the components for a design. So we can see that big components is ending up in the black and white little Marini here. And I've always have been fascinated and inspired by history, and it permeates all my work. I also took a turn from images to focus on creating fonts and text, more specifically on quotes from impactful historical figures like Howard Zinn William Shakespeare, or more recently, George Orwell. And this piece is combining mosaic technique with the murrine letters to recreate the original French Declaration of Human Rights, and using over 17,500 little independent tiles. So when I started that project, I didn't know where I was going, so I started the letter and forming the sentence together. But to the second line, I figured out that I needed a blank line in between the lines. So that's end up adding 10,000 Marini to my original project. And this is a glimpse of my workstation where you can see the imported glass from Murano, my material of choice, and my messy flame working station. And in my studio, I have a cold working area where I spend way more time than I would like, but it is essential to the results that I'm trying to achieve. So let me give you a quick context around historical murrine. These are 2,000 years old fragments with bold color and amazing details where we can clearly see the recurrent pattern. That's more amazing example. Some have survived as a whole. And these fantastic images give away a lot of clues about the creation process. Arrows showing connecting elements. So you can see the color block, then the image being decomposed and recomposed. So on the top right, we can see the legs being kind of like cut off and not lined up perfectly. So that's give us that, telling us what to look for. And that image is one of the most delicate and well realized of the ancient Marini that I found during my research. And the arrows indicate a faint line where glass been added in order to achieve the square format. This one still stands today as a powerful symbol of Egypt. And we can also see the difference around the head with the blue and the other background blue. It's a slightly different blue. And you can see how modern this could be. So there is like really amazing details and so much work going to those. So that is a face from the famous Fayum's portraits found on sarcophaguses, and that is around the same time than the previously shown Marini. And those one were like used wax and paint, so we can see it's like the surface kind of being scratched. So it's really 2,000 years ago, and it still look like very actual. So this glass Marini on the left and this painted Fayum's portrait are both from the end of 2nd century AD. And my guesstimate is the portrait might have been used as an inspiration for that Marini. Although what are the chances that nobody else saw it before and then those two survived to today? So I feel there is a lot of detailed similarity with the two images. Like the nose, little black spike on the right. There is, of course, the overall look. The toga and the shadow, the shades are really look like it's been made from the Marini being made from that image, but it's pure speculation from me. So let me quickly explain the Marini process, which is a complex and time-consuming process. And it is essentially building each component separately in glass and combining them. This drawing breaks down all the multiple stages and components, as well as the layer added to finish a piece. So we can see on the left, there is the first pistil of the flower. So I did like a by 3. So I combined 3 of those to have the petal. And one time I have a petal, I put it, stretch the glass to have 5 different components. Then I can add together to have the full flower. And then you can see the following stages of it. And I will show you more images to be. So that was the drawing, and that's the glass. So it's kind of a sushi. A murrine requires different elements to be put together while hot to build one segment of the final piece. Then keep adding and layering to all your segments to create your design. Each step also requires stretching or pulling the hot elements as you build. Once you get the design you want to fuse and reheat them together again and pull them while hot. When it's cooled down, you can cross-cut into the piece and it's revealed the design. So here is, we can see all the individual parts. I need to build more patterns. That is like another same step, but all those little segments put together around the core. We can see the original flower on the center. And that's the first flower, which is end up on the center. And here is the segment gathered before final hot assembly and last pull. The whole process takes weeks. And we can see still in the center the original flower. So these patterns show up a lot from that period and even beyond that time. This can look simple, but to form a consistent pattern from each component requires skill and patience, as we need to pull these original big components long enough to cut them to this kind of like trying to have the same size to make sense at the end. So these are all my attempts. We can see there is a couple smaller. And there is code working phases in between to each piece, right? For have the yellow lines trying to connect with the other yellow line as good as we can. So that's the process. One time it's been put together. That shows you the scale when hot on the torch. Here are some of the stages of the building process. So we can see each time the patterns go a little bit smaller and also get deformation, right? Because of the glass going hot, then of course it's moved a little bit. And here are some of the results and the final outcome. So this ancient Egyptian murrine is a bit funny looking, but raised the question, what was the influence and the preliminary model? This design is also interesting to me because we can clearly see the saw cut. I show you with the red arrow, raising the same question of what tools they might have used to saw those glass blocks and how they might have and it might have been a similar way they might have saw the pyramid stones. From my research, it has amazed me that the stone blocks of the pyramid, which might be limestone, are less dense than glass, raising more questions of what tools they used to cut so thin and in quantity such small and delicate objects in glass that can easily shatter. And the Tutankhamun had like 3 different coffins, and 2 of them are made out of glass and stones and gold, but mostly with that technique. So they really cut it. It might have been a cutting industry.
Mathieu, if I
Yeah.
can interrupt just for one moment,
Cool.
because there was a question from someone about your process.
Yeah.
I think maybe they haven't seen murrine being made before. And so could you please clarify to them how you are making each component that then gets bound together to then melt and pull the murrine?
So it's very hard to explain. It's like you work on like an inch and a quarter long, and you control the image and the face of it, but you work on the length. So let's imagine a sushi. So we build the sushi with the carrots, the fish, or whatever goes into it. And without stretching it, we just pull it And then the inside, when we look at the sushi, then we see the inside. So that's the same idea. Or we can also talk about millefiori, which is the same idea of a murrine, but a millefiori, it's like 1,000 flower. So, and it's made with mold. So in Murano, they have like furnaces with different glass colored, so they can gather successfully different glass with colors and dip it into the mold, the optic mold, generally star mold, and then stretch this big mass of glass, and then we just chop it. So the cross cutting reveal the image. So I'm sorry, it's very hard to explain even in French, but then in English it's getting
Yeah.
tricky.
No, that's very helpful. I think also just to clarify that this is done on the torch. So you're actually flame working as opposed to marini that many people may be familiar with that's done in the hot shop. So
Exactly.
you're working at the torch with different colored rods, and you're using those rods to layer one color on top of the other to create your design. And
Exactly.
basically,
Exactly.
yeah, get a large sort of mass, which you then pull into a long cane and you then chop into slices to reveal the design.
Yes. And then to go maybe just a little more in depth, it's like playing with really the heat. So I need to build a cold core. I mean, cold like in a hot glass. So cold enough that it doesn't move anymore.
Right.
And lay on it stroke by stroke the new glass color. So it's really playing like it's about building a cold core who can take the pressure of adding and smearing some glass on it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. So now that's the owl Marini. So in my mind, the best I found, it's very elaborate design and beautifully executed. I was so mesmerized by that piece that I tried to acquire one. And the only one I found sold for more than $16,000 US at Christie's. It was one of the trigger to do my own. And here we are. So let's go into that endeavor. So trying to recreate an historical object without all the context, it's a bit like a detective's job. To find out, I researched owl imagery in other materials from the same era, like wood, stone, and drawing, that haven't been altered by the same glass shaping process. I was surprised to discover that the patterns and even some colors matched pretty well. This gave me a real insight into what their model might have been. You can clearly see the relationship between the stone sculpture, which preserves delicate curves around the neck, and the wood model, which help explain what those red parts in the Murini are. The drawings show the attention to build a structure, and if you look closely, you can see how symmetrical the features are on the face. Sorry. So today, with internet and the new technology like touch screen, where we can zoom into tiny details, give us new insight into how things were made. This kind of close study isn't reserved just for scholars with special access anymore. So the arrow 1 shows the faded fused line due to a connection of the different component with the cold working phase in between hot process. So we can see, right, that little line. So that's really tell us the steps of the process. The arrow 2 shows the same line who helped to determine the basis of this pattern. The arrow 3 shows a different coloration in the white. Was it another batch of white, another piece of hot glass added to stay faithful to the model? And those are just questions. The arrow 4 shows a shift in the line connection. So why? And the arrow 5 show a thin white line in between the blue element of the pattern, helping us again to determine the exact shape of the pattern. And the arrow 6 clearly shows the connection of the 4 final parts assembly. Arrow 1 in that photo shows again connection line between parts. The arrow 2 and 3 shows angle in the design who are not into the stone's design, leading to believe it is unintentional and revealing the probable block of white used in the construction shown by the black number and lines separating construction blocks. This brings up more questions. Should I reproduce the image that humanity has been looking at for 2,200 years with all its so-called flaws, or it is a serendipitous result or even relevant to the object's spiritual meaning? Alternatively, should I speculate on what their base design was and take creative freedom from my reconstructed model? That would mean privileging my speculation over the tangible artifact. There are many paths to a similar result. Sometimes you have to try a bunch to find a better process. Should I explore new ways, building on the work of my predecessors, just as they did in their own time? Or is the sacred weight of history too heavy? And should I just surrender and reproduce what I see without critical thought? So this attempt was also a test for me. Like in a chess player book from Stefan Zweig's story, I needed to know if I truly understood the technique or if I was just deceiving myself. So what did I decide to do? In order to reproduce it, my first step was to break down the design on paper. And when you look at the whole object, your brain gets overloaded with information. It is hard to know where to start. I had to look for recurrent patterns and find the smallest common denominator. Slowly, parts of the design began to take form. The second big difficulty was figuring out how to articulate and merge all these different parts. So according to speculation, I aimed for this design. Trying to keep the proportionality between them was another challenge. Then, when I measured the model, despite its unconventional shape, I was surprised and excited to discover it had square dimensions. This indicates it might have been pulled as a square bar and then cold worked into its final shape. What a discovery to establish bigger theories. Now, here are some photos of the process. So you can recognize the pattern. So that's in the kiln before merging those parts hot. So we can see here there is nothing holding the parts together. So I put it high in my annealer, and then it's kind of like tack fuse all those parts together. Then I can come with a hot piece of glass, kind of a pony, and then stick it in the middle and fuse all those parts in the flame. So that's the same, that's my morning preparations. So now I have some parts. The question is how to merge them together. I was also pleasantly surprised when during the process, some obvious similarity in the design occurred and indicated me I was on the right path. So we can see this deformation of those white segments. And that was unintentional, but it's magically fit the original. So the shift in the line of the original piece also made sense one time I got further on the project. Once I pull the glass, the accuracy of the design can get warped and lose a bit of details. You observe the same issue on my work. So that's more photos during the process. And you start big and you keep going smaller. So you have more you work, more you have pieces, but they're getting smaller and smaller. So you generally have several versions of the same murrine, right? Like the worst piece, I mean, the less good piece you have, you put together as a rehearsal for the next version. So I have 3 versions and I will show you. So then step by step, the proportion need to be exact as I want the line to fit as perfectly as possible. One of the beauty of that design is that the white beak is defined by like the counter shape. That's very, very clever from them. So we can see the second version on the right and the third version and best version with small adjustment. First version is the small one in between. Then the same lack of glass on the center of the four parts appears now. I ask myself if I should keep it as is to really match the original. I finally decided to add some glass to fill that gap. Then, kept in place with metal wires, I was ready to assemble the rest hot and had white glass where it needed. That's photo during the hot assembly. That's the version 2 of 3 after hot assembly. And before pulling to their historical size of 1.2 centimeter, which is half an inch, the glass construction might have been around 2 inches high and maybe 1 inch wide. Then during the process, some pieces remain due to the multiple pulling. The 25-cent coins give us an idea of the size. So that's also those, we can see the stretching on the cross of the piece. Here are all the steps of the constructions and original plan. That's the version 2 of 3 because the beak is a bit big. It's a bit like fat. It's more narrow on the model. So we can see down on the right, that's the third version on the right. And here are all the individual components. That's the version 3 and the best one before pulling. So we really see like the cross in the middle, right? Where the four parts are merging. With all the work I had to do, I used the leftover hands of pulls to create some artifacts using some parts. That's another and another one. So those were like the creative parts of that project. So that's the final bar sliced with version 1, the small one, and version 3, the big one, and which is half an inch for the big one. So this work led me to establish some theories of how they might have done to create murrine at the time with the material they might had. A quick note about that is today, due to our modern torches, we mainly roll the glass in the flame, so most millefiori or murrine are round. I believe the ancient was fusing their parts in square mold before to stretch them. Indeed, it would have been harder to have cylinder mold when square are fairly easy to achieve with sheets of ceramic or else. So that led to a different approach. And in conclusion, I want to say, as we all know, that ancient Egypt still holds so many secrets about their creation and engineering. And even with all the tools, the easy energy, fairly easy energy with gas or oxygen in tank of the world, they still continue to amaze with their ingenuity and craftsmanship. And it was fascinating and a privilege to get to dive deeper into those techniques and try to mimic the motions and thoughts of those ancestors that they might have had. And I thank you all for listening. And please, if you have some questions.
Thank you so much, Matthew. That was absolutely incredible. And I don't know if everyone can really grasp even how amazing it is that these are compositions that you are creating through the heat of the torch. So, while we are seeing the glass when it's cold and it's being bundled together on the tabletop, all of those assemblage are going into the heat of the flame and being melted and pulled in a way that does not distort your composition and allows you to come to the end point where you have these incredibly detailed owl murrine. It's just absolutely, absolutely amazing. I know we do have a few questions in the chat here, so let me see where we are at. Someone is asking about the core. You mentioned that you start with sort of a core that you try to keep cooler as you are layering hot glass on top.
Yeah.
And they want to know how large is that mass that you are working with, and how long of a cane can you pull once you heat up the mass?
So when we look at it, every design will be different. We need to find the entry door to a design, which, like, for example, the eyes we see will be the black pupils. And then we build the white around. So we do a cylinder in black. And then one time this black cylinder is kind of like cold, or like it's becoming the core of fairly cold glass, then we can layer the white around the black. So, and then we wait a bit for the white to settle in temperature, and then we can paddle. So every straight line we can see being like paddle, right, um, to get this shape. So we work the murrine as as a cylinder, but we control the window from the front. So, so now if we look at this design, we can start to decompose it. So we can see the black round, it's not totally round because they might have, it's moving a little bit. So how could we make it that perfect? So we really need to play with the temperature and wait for this black core to set before to smear piece by piece the white on it.
Right. And I should mention too for everyone that that sort of brings up another part of this process that's so tenuous is the temperature management. Because when Mathieu says he's allowing the core to get cold, what he really means is that he is allowing the glass to get to a place where it is no longer moving, but it's still warm enough that it's not going to crack.
Yes.
So there's a lot of balancing that has to go on with regard to managing the heat so that you have a mass that is cold enough that you are not distorting the design as you layer on it, and yet not so cold that it cracks and ruins the entire composition.
Yes, you're totally right. And that's exactly the heat management between all those parts. So that's the fun part. Then it's like with the torch, we can heat one side and let cool, and we need to let cool the other side to have some strength to be able to push on without losing everything. So
Right.
that's really heat management, and that's where the fun is with the Marini. It's like you can be very, very precise,
Yeah.
like opposite to the opposite. It's like a glory hole where it's like the same heat for everything, and then you put back your glass in the glory hole, and everything take the same heat. But with the
Right.
torch, it's end up being a very fancy glory hole where we can target a very specific point. So it's all about waiting for that point to be cold. I mean, cold, as you said, cold for hot glass, and then waiting. So there is a lot like in music where there is silence. Well, when doing Marini, there is a lot of time where we just wait. We just wait for the glass to cool down to the core, or we don't need it to cool down too much because we need to smear it, push it a little bit left or right. So that gives us like it's a whole new game to play with.
Right. Right. Someone is also wondering how long did the Marini take to make if you exclude the research side of it, which of course is very time consuming, and just focus on the hot glass portion?
If all adding together, maybe a month and a half. But there was so many, like I stopped in the middle because I had a lot of doubt when I did half of it, and the beak, I needed to do the beak, but you doubt of why are you doing that impossible project, or you don't know where you're going. I go in the dark with a lamp torch, and then I try to find some solid walls around. So sometimes I need to stop to be able to, just like not dive into too cold water. And a month later, then you wake up in the morning and then the solution appears. So you trying, and it's worked or not. But then it's really like a research and development.
Also, we have someone wondering about what role did Marini play in the ancient era, and were they seen as a talisman, or how were these utilized or regarded?
So from what I understood, it was mainly utilized to do the tomb and the sarcophaguses. So we talk about the Ptolemaic period, so it's 200 years AD. So yeah, that's because I mean, I'm not an archaeologist, obviously, but from the information I gathered online, the craft area, the craftsmen's was all in the same area. And then just like in glass blowing in the Middle Age, the king was, I mean, the buyers were not just paying for the glass. He was paying for the wood guy, the tool guy. So there was so much more craft were going into doing those objects. So you needed to be aristocracy or the kings to be able to pay the old village to for at the end be able to realize those. So and what lead me to say that it's like because it's um, tombs and sarcophaguses and surrounding some entrance of those um, Tutankhamun, like it's not caves, it's like those, yeah, kind of cave in the pyramid. So now we found a lot. Some are very similar. So I was wondering if there are training pieces, like lower income people could maybe afford a couple of them around portraits. But it's very hard to define because even trying to read what the archaeologists say about, I really didn't find a lot of information. They were calling that mosaic glass, and I think they mistook the glass for gemstone a lot of time.
Hmm.
So because they were not just using glass, they were using also gemstone and ceramics um, and woods and glass. So, I don't know when they started to really look with the microscopes and be able to for sure say what material it was made of. And,
Right.
and, and sorry, I just want to complete too. Then this technique kind of disappeared for almost 2,000 years and just being revived by Giacomo Francini in Murano in 1850. So it's amazing to see that it's a very long history, but very narrow. And nobody almost, or nobody than I know, than we know, uh, reproduced that technique for almost 2,000 years. And then now we can hear the French or the English or whoever saying they invented the red glass or such a color glass in the 16th or 15th century. But we can see the amazing color they had already 200 years before Christ. So I think it's underrated.
Mm. Thank you. We have a question also from Judith Cushman wondering what kind of academic support are you finding for this pioneering work? It seems that this is not a one person mission, and you are discovering valuable historic information in addition to the artistic value of the work.
Well, I'm trying to get in contact with scholars or archaeologists who are interested in those things, but I must say I didn't found anybody so far who's willing to discuss with me. So I'm just making my own assumption.
All right, thank you. And I think similarly, Howard was wondering if there are any museums that are displaying the ancient artifacts that you are getting your inspiration from, and if they are indeed aware of your work to replicate them.
I'm not sure they're aware of my work, but Corning Museum of Glass has some amazing ones, and the Met in New York, I think, has the one I tried to reproduce. I still didn't have the opportunity to go visit it and seeing it for real, but yeah, if anybody knows people there who will be interested, I will be gladly put in contact.
All right. Also, a quick question regarding the COE of the glass. You're using Italian glass, correct?
Yeah,
So,
that's right. It's COE 104 because I didn't show any images of Giacomo Francini's work, but he set some stones for century to come with the portraits he did, and he was using the Murano glass. So for me, it's very important to use the same glass as it's trigger the same questions. That said, there is amazing work are made now with borosilicate glass, which allow different, it doesn't move as much. So it's allow different kind of design, different pattern. And I must say my colleague do an exquisite job with that glass. But for me, it's important to reuse the ancient glass. Being from Europe, living in North America, I like that combining tradition and being in the new world today and participate to trying to find new thing. So it's important for me the link between the ancient and the new world.
and just to explain to people that may not be familiar with COE, it just refers to coefficient of expansion. And in very simple terms, in glass, it really differentiates between glass that moves very quickly in the flame versus glass that is very, very stiff in the flame. So,
Yes, exactly. I used to put it like it's like the borosilicate. It's more like a car. If you take a 90-degree turn, it's gonna go right away. But the soft glass, it's more like a boat. When you want to turn, there is a long momentum. So when you go out of the flame, the glass it's still moving, it's still moving. So there is a lot of like you did it before, so just like a boat, right? You know when it's gonna turn because it's a body knowledge. It's not an intellectual knowledge, or you don't count, like how long you're outside of the flame. It's just like you did it before, so you feel it.
yeah, yeah. Also, a question from Eric. Many of these components have been heated, cooled, and reheated dozens of times or more. Is there any risk in this process? And does the glass degrade or lose any of its inherent properties?
Yes, great question, Eric. I heard a lot of theory about it, and hopefully I heard theory that you cannot heat the glass more than 5 times before it's degrade. But I say hopefully I didn't hear it before because I did it like maybe 30, 40 times, and I don't notice an obvious degradation, like with my eyes. That said, sometimes some of Marini break, and I don't know why. So maybe some colors are more sensitive. I heard also some alabaster glass doesn't mix well with opaque glass or transparent. So like I guess there is as many theories as there is glass blowers, which is make it fascinating because I mean, I guess if the piece survive, you're right. So there's many ways of being right, and great surprise. Like it's really really good questions. Like who knows?
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any teaching opportunities coming up or exhibitions or things you'd like to share?
I actually just had a show in the museum of the Glass Museum in Charleroi in Belgium, and it's up until 9 of November. And I will teach in Sarah Sadi Legrand in Kansas City in November, so next month. And after the next one will be in Corning next year and Penland.
Okay, and you have a website, I assume that.
Um, I do have a website. Unfortunately, it's not very updated. I function a lot with Instagram as it's like chronologically working and easy to manage. So if you have any questions regarding Marinis or anything, like please contact me over Instagram. It will be a pleasure to answer to you.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording, but we can all stay on after to say hello to Mathieu and ask any remaining questions you have. Mathieu, thank you so much for being with us today and for an excellent, excellent presentation.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really appreciated.